Now it's time I share with you my top 10 favorite comic book movies of all time. Now keep in mind these are my personal favorites. These are the ones that kind of give me goosebumps and excite me, and when I watch them, they make me feel like a badass deep down inside. So at number 10, it's Sin City, directed by Robert Rodriguez, and this is a perfect adaptation of a comic book. I mean, this almost looks like it was taken right out of the comic book pages, put on film, and here you go. Now this movie definitely broke a lot of ground for visual effects and stylistic filming, because before Sin City, we never really seen anything like this. You know, it's like a black and white movie, but then you have like little pops of color everywhere. This movie follows 3 different storylines, and my personal favorite is the one of Marv, played by Mickey Rourke. This is just some big badass guy who has a huge nose that's been broken like 27 times. He's a brawler, he has all these band-aids over him, and his probation officer is a very hot lesbian woman. And spoiler alert, but at one point she actually gets her arms cut off, and I don't know why, but I still was strangely attracted to her. And at number 9, it's one of my childhood favorites of all time. I grew up with this movie. It's one of the first movies I remember always watching on beta tape over and over. I think it's because my dad recorded it because he was too cheap to get the VHS. Anyway, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original. Now, I've heard the rumor of how the concept of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book came about. It was a couple of guys sitting in a bar, and they were kind of joking around, and one guy kind of wrote the name out on a napkin, and that was pretty much how the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became what they are. I mean, Jesus, how else could you come up with that unless you were intoxicated at the time? This early 90s movie feels like a very guerrilla-style movie. You know, the camera's kind of just swooping through the tunnels. It's not overlit. It's not, you know, pretty. It's just dirty. It's a sewer. These turtles live in it, and it scared me as a young boy. And that says something about this movie because it had balls. You know, we're not catering to these little 5-year-old kids. No, no, no. We're gonna give the fans what they want. I mean, Corey Feldman did the voice for one of the Ninja Turtles. Doesn't that mean anything? Okay, true story. When I was 5 years old, I had a teenage cousin named Scott. And he actually used to watch this movie all the time. And he actually was planning on running away one night so he could join the Foot. I shit you not, that is a true story. What happened? I think he got sent to military school. Alright, coming in at number 8, it's Watchmen. Now, much like Sin City, Watchmen is another comic book movie that looks like it was lifted straight off the panels of the comic and put onto film. You know, visually, Watchmen is just stunning to look at. It's almost like every scene is a perfectionist shot, more so than any other comic book movie. Just every angle of the camera is just so smooth, and it's almost gliding through the whole movie. And Zack Snyder, you know, once again, say what you will about Zack Snyder, but the guy knows how to make a good-looking movie. And he wasn't scared to take risks, and he didn't give in to the studio and make it a PG-13, you know, baby down piece of shit. And a lot of blue dangly man meat dangling, Dr. Manhattan, you know what I'm talking about. By the way, after watching that movie, I just felt really inadequate, you know. Coming in at number 7, this is 300. That was my Gerard Butler impression. Anyway, 300 is at my number 7 pick, and another movie directed by Zack Snyder. Now, 300, visually, once again, Zack Snyder did a perfect job. You know, you have all these badass Spartans, and they took some, you know, liberties with, you know, historical looks, and they made all these guys covered in baby oil with great abs and pecs and great definition, but they also turned these guys who look like Abercrombie models with some scruff on their face into badass Spartans. Anyway, X2 is one of the best comic book movies because it really gives the fans what they want. You know, you have all these great characters coming together, they're fighting side by side, the visuals, the effects, the story. The opening shot in X-Men 2 is just, it's very different, it's very cool. You know, you have Nightcrawler, and he's going through the White House, you know, and then he puts a knife right beside the president's head. Now, X-Men 2 is directed by Bryan Singer, who also directed another comic book movie by the name of Superman Returns. And I might have to save that one for the top 10 worst comic book movies. And X-Men 2 did a very good job at balancing the characters. You know, it gave enough screen time to every single character to make them all feel important. Now, coming at number 5, it's Iron Man, starring Robert Downey Jr. And Iron Man was Marvel's first attempt at the comic book, you know, movies. And it really paid off because they did what they should have with this movie. And they casted the perfect Tony Stark. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. was made to play that role. And there's something about his asshole-like, drunk, hungover character who's a playboy billionaire who's really good at building things. You know, I think I could be all of those things except for the guy who could build things and be scientific about shit. You know, I just hang around in my mansion all day and blow up cars powers, and then I'd hire somebody to make me an Iron Man suit, but then I'd kill myself 6 minutes later trying to fly up to the sky, but then I don't realize that you have to have like a defroster on it, so I just freeze up like an ice cube and go back down into the asphalt. I don't know, a millionaire asshole with a great goatee who did a lot of coke in the mid-1990s but made a comeback in the early 2000s, and now I play a superhero named Tony Stark. Alright, coming in at number 4, and bear with me, you guys are probably like, why isn't this number 1 or 2? It's the Avengers. And I love the Avengers. It was the ultimate collaboration between all these great Marvel superheroes, and they finally put them together, and they did a great job at it. You know, they balanced it. Joss Whedon was the writer-director. Not only did they pick the perfect fanboy to do all of this, but they picked a pretty damn good director. But after watching the Avengers for the second time, I realized something. I realized that this movie is one of those movies that is really good the first time you see it, and the second time you see it, it just kind of fades a little bit. And a lot of movies, in my opinion, do that, but the great ones, some of the ones that I have in my top 10, some of them get better the second time. One of the best things about the Avengers, and the one character who really stole the show, was the Incredible Hulk. You know, finally they got this guy perfect, and there's just something about every second that he was on screen, it was like eye candy, you know? This movie as a whole was the definition of perfect popcorn action fun. But when you threw the Hulk in there, it was like an orgasm with pixie sticks and popcorn, just all kinds of shit flying around. Hulk, say, shut up! Coming in at number 3, it's a movie directed by Matthew Vaughn. It's Kickass. This movie kind of took me by surprise. And, you know, I remember seeing the trailers for it and really, you know, I was looking forward to it. But after watching the movie, I went back to see it 2 more times in the theater. And ever since I bought it on Blu-ray, I've watched the thing like 10 times. I don't know what it is. There's just something about the tone, the look of this movie that I can really, I see myself as Kickass. Or, you know what, I actually more so see myself as Hit Girl, but I don't want to get into that. Anyway, Kick-Ass was a very low-budget comic book movie. You know, it was shot for like $30 million, and I've always respected movies like that because they really have to get more creative and they're not overly produced, and you feel like they're working with what they have. Plus, the comedy in this movie is my kind of comedy, you know, the jokes that they make, and the movie has Nicolas Cage in it. I mean, the movie starts off with the main character sitting in his computer chair, whacking off to National Geographic. That just sounds like, if you gave me $10 million, that's how my movie would start too. Alright, coming in at number 2, it's V for Vendetta. A movie I almost knew nothing about going into, but when I sat and watched this thing in the theater, I was blown away. And I still am, because I love the dialogue in this movie. It's so smart and clever, and it's well thought out. You had the main character V, played by Hugo Weaving. Remember the 5th of November. Vengeance is for I can't even do more than 6 V words, or else my head would explode. Something about this movie almost feels very surreal when you watch it, because this is kind of almost like what the future is going to be like. You know, you have a government who's taking over, you know, putting cameras everywhere, regulating what we do, what we watch. I mean, it's happening slowly but surely when you really look at the big picture. So there's something about that that creeps me out, and at the same time, I really hope there's a guy in a Guy Fawkes mask, you know, 20 years from now who's going to kick ass, but when you take off the mask, has 3rd-degree burns and he starts making eggies in a basket. But that whole segment where you have Natalie Portman in that cell and she's really, you know, just going through harsh times and she's sacrificing everything, and she basically, you know, she still has her pride but she's ready to die for it. That's a very inspirational, you know, segment of the movie. Not only that, the whole entire movie kind of gives you goosebumps because you have this guy who's, you know, it's kind of like the story of Batman, but he's more than a man, he's a symbol, and in this movie he really does give everything. Where's number 1? It's right here. Okay, that was my Batman impression. Anyway, coming at number 1, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit, please forgive me. It's the only way I could possibly do this top 10 list and keep it a top 10. It's Christopher Nolan's Batman Trilogy, and the way I look at it, this is one movie. This is one long movie. What can I possibly say that hasn't already been said about these movies? These movies are more than just comic book movies. These movies evoke emotion, true depth, and at times you forget that you're watching a comic book movie because the way Christopher Nolan shoots a movie, you know, it's not all glamorous. It's very gritty, it's very realistic, and that's what I really love about these movies. And Christopher Nolan's version of Batman, well, to me, that is the Batman I've been waiting to see all my life. Anyway, let me explain how I put my Batman trilogy in order and why. At number 3, I'm gonna have to say The Dark Knight. Because Joker was the thing that held that movie together like glue. You know, some kind of glue that has green hair with a little bit of white paste in it. Anyway, at number 3 is going to have to be The Dark Knight. You know, it's a great, phenomenal movie. It's a crime drama gangster movie with Batman in it. But, you know, I prefer Batman Begins just a little bit more, just a smidgen more, because the origin story, it was an origin story that was different than the others, but they got it right and it felt that's the way Batman came to be. Plus, I really like how the first half of the movie explores, you know, the criminal mastermind part of, you know, understanding what criminals are, and Batman joins the League of Shadows, and it's not just some rich guy, you know, buying parts to be Batman. It's more than that. And then you have The Dark Knight Rises, and to me, the reason I love that movie is because Batman was finally physically challenged by a villain who could kick his ass. And Bane, you know, you had Tom Hardy playing Bane, one of my favorite actors playing one of my favorite Batman villains. So anyway, guys, that's my top 10 favorite comic book movies of all time. Let me know what your favorite comic book movie is and your least favorite comic book movie is down below, because I just might make my top 10 worst comic book movies of all time. Maybe. I don't know. I'd almost have to do like a 20 list for that, because there's so many damn bad ones out there. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.